Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to another edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch. We are right in the middle of Pro Tour Hour of Devastation. All the rounds have been played, the top 8 has been set, and they're going to play tonight to see who the winner is. As you can imagine, the singles market already being impacted by what we've seen so far from the Pro Tour, and we'll be taking a close look at the standard singles as we always do, but we're also going to check in the world of Modern, Legacy, and there's definitely some notable commander benches to talk about this week as well. Quickly before we get started, if you check out the description below, you'll find a couple ways to help support us, one of which is our Amazon affiliate store. If you make any purchases via the links there, a small percentage will come back to help us out. Secondly, you'll also find our Patreon page linked below as well. With that out of the way, let's get into the cards. We're going to start off, as we always do, with standard and the cards that lost value this week. Coming in number 5, Ronas the Indomitable, down 49 cents this week to 11.70. Not a huge loss for this card. Still seeing play in standard in the energy deck. Still seeing play in modern in the company counters decks. However, a lot of packs of this have been open now. There's a lot of Ronases out there compared to the amount of play that the card sees. So I think this will continue to slowly drop over time. Coming in number 4 is Gideon Ally of Zendikar, down 51 cents to 13.42. This one's an interesting case study because this is a card that is closing in on the rotation this fall, and because of that, a lot of players are going to start abandoning the card. Simply, if you decided you're not going to be playing Gideon in this meta, it's pretty much safe at this point to start selling off those copies. Now, beyond standard, the card does see play in Modern as well as Legacy, so if you can eventually, maybe a few weeks down the road, pick these up for under $10, might be a good pickup for the future, considering its use in the other formats. Now, don't count Gideon out of standard yet. Still seeing standard play, and I think will until he's out of the format, quite honestly. Mardu Vehicles decks are still around. Some of them are still running Gideon, and even though it's not as popular, maybe as successful as it was in past versions of the meta, Gideon's still there. Another place you'll find Gideon are the Azorius Monument decks, which, even though none of them top 8'd this Pro Tour, they were out there in the field, and they were not looking bad in some of the other events that have been going on over the last couple weeks. So Gideon isn't out of the format yet. Keep an eye on this card. It will probably stabilize a little bit before it goes down when it gets really close to the rotation time. Number 3, Grim Flyer, down 51 cents to 13.96. This one's actually pretty interesting too. Again, another card that sees Legacy and Modern play. Is definitely a card to think about post-rotation, even due to the fact that it sees play in these formats. But this is a card that has 4 copies of one of the top 8 decks, and that's the Constrictor deck. So because of that, I'm a little surprised to see the decline this week, especially considering it's from Eldritch Moon, which out of all the current era Magic sets, standard sets, has the lowest print run probably by far, quite honestly. And this is dating all the way back to like Return to Ravnica. So cards from this particular set are going to do a better job at holding their value, especially when we get to rotation time. Coming in at number 2 is Heart of Kirin, down 77 cents to 11.75. Now here's a card that again isn't completely out of standard or anything like that. It still shows up in vehicles decks. However, its impact on the format has lessened to a very strong degree recently. And because of that, coupled with the fact that a lot of packs have been opened of Aether Revolt, this card is going to continue to go down. Coming in number 1, Liliana the Last Hope, down $1.03 to 30.41. Now, Liliana, again, is another card creeping towards rotation, and I'm sure a lot of players are hesitant about a $30 card that they may only be able to play in standard for a few weeks at this point. But there are a couple copies of her in the Golgari Constrictor deck, which is in the top 8 of the Pro Tour, so that's definitely worth noting. It's also worth noting that this is an Eldritch Moon card, and much like some of the other cards that we saw on the list today, she does see play outside of standard as well, so she's not going to completely bottom out. She will go down a little bit, obviously, over the next few weeks, I have no doubt, but don't expect this card to get maybe much below $20 at best, quite honestly. All right, let's move on to the standard cards that have gained value this week. You're definitely going to see an influence here from the Pro Tour. Now, if you've been watching the Pro Tour, you know what our top 8 consists of. Basically 5 aggro red, or what they're calling Ramanap red decks right now. Also, we have a black-red aggro deck. We have the Constrictor deck I've been talking about. Finally, the top 8 is rounded out by a mono-black zombies deck, which is very, very close to the old Mono Black Zombies deck that won the last Pro Tour, which is actually pretty interesting. So let's see how this is affecting the market. Now, normally we look at 5 cards, but today we're going to look at 6 because I thought number 6 was important. Number 6, Hazaret the Fervent, up 252 to 855. You can see even our 6th spot is going up $2.50. So you know it's going to be a hot week for Standard. Hazaret has looked amazing at the Pro Tour. These mono red decks, which I thought had a chance of doing well in the previous meta. I even thought had a chance to do very well in the meta before that. Well, it's finally happened. They got the last few pieces they needed from this set, and they are very hot right now. 5 of them, like I said, in the top 8 of the Pro Tour. And Hazaret the Fervent leading the way is one of the key cards. So this is going to be a card that continues to go up over the next few weeks. It's going to be very hot going forward. Coming in number 5, God Pharaoh's Gift, up 280 to 334. Now this is an interesting story. A little over a week ago, God Pharaoh's Gift deck came in 7th place in the Star City Games Classic, which is a smaller tournament, but that really garnered a lot of attention, and this is a really sweet deck. Like, it captures players' imaginations. It's one of those decks a lot of players will gravitate to just because it's cool. Now, with that being said, it was in the Pro Tour, did not make the top 8, did not put up the results that a lot of people expected it to put up, and because of that, the cards are already starting to drop. This one has already gone down since the last, say, 48 hours or so. And even though it's up week to week, there does already appear to be a softening in the key cards from this deck. So be very careful. Don't overpay for these. Watch where they go over the next few days. I think they'll start coming down. By next week, I wouldn't be surprised to see this on the other list. Number 4, Champion of Wits, up 336 this week to 694. Another card that's in that God Pharaoh's Gift deck. However, it's also in Emerge decks. So this has a better foothold than that previous card. This also has gone down a little bit over the last 48 hours or so, but it's just a matter of, I think, 6 cents or 5 cents, something like that. So it hasn't gone down too much. Overall, the power level is still here for the card. I do think the fact that you don't see any copies in the top 8 will cause this to stabilize a little bit, but don't count it out yet. Coming in number 3, Chandra Torch of Defiance, up 384 to 3243. Okay, maybe no surprise. We've been talking about mono red decks and how great they've been. Now, with that being said, a couple of things to point out about this card. One of which, the mono deck builds that run her don't run 4-ofs necessarily. She's not like a slam dunk 4-of. A lot of decks are actually even running her out of the board. So some you'll see a couple copies in the main. Others you'll see a couple copies coming out of the board. So with that being said, coupled with the fact that this card also had a really high print run, a lot of Kaladesh packs have been opened, I can't imagine this card can possibly sustain over the $30 mark for very long, quite honestly. Even though it's going to see a lot of play, it's going to be a key part of this meta going forward, no doubt. But I think once we get past the Pro Tour hype over the next couple weeks, this will start to drop again. I think we'll settle in around the $25 mark for a while, and I think that might be more of a fair price for the card. So keep an eye on this one. Don't overpay. Still a great card. Still going to see a lot of play, but right now I feel like the price is a little bit inflated. Coming in number 2, Earthshaker Kenra, up 395 to 488. Well, on Monday I did a video looking at Hour of Devastation singles, and at that time I said, you know what, you can pick these things up for under $1. You really should grab a playset. So I hope y'all listen to me, because this is crazy. That's a huge spike, and rightfully so. The card looked incredible this weekend. This was the key ingredient I think that was missing to push the mono red aggro into a top tier deck for the last couple metas. It's here now, and it's not going away. This card will continue to go up for a little bit. It is a rare. It's not a mythic, so that will lead to it stabilizing, I think, relatively quickly once we get past the Pro Tour hype, but it's still going to be a key card for a while. Coming in number 1, Angel of Invention, up $457 this week to $8. Another key card in the God Pharaoh's Gift deck, and much like God Pharaoh's Gift itself, this card is already declining due to the fact that that deck did not put up a result at the Pro Tour that a lot of folks expected. So this card has actually gone down quite a bit in the last 48 hours and is quickly stabilizing. I think, again, this is another card we might see on the other list next week. All right, let's move on to Modern. You're going to see some interesting things going on in Modern. There's definitely more of a hesitancy to pick up some of the big cards right now due to the fact that we're on the verge of getting 2 Master sets coming out over the next few months. You're going to see that play out, I think, over the course of the next number of months now in the market watches. Also, another thing you'll see is there's still some popular decks kind of coming and going. and also Commander cards. Even though technically some of the cards we're going to look at today are not really seeing play in Modern decks, they are Modern legal cards, but they are getting a push due to Commander. So let's look at the cards that lost value this week. Coming in number 5, Mishra's Bauble, down 306 to 3154. I think this is a pure case of folks thinking this card is going to see a reprint in either one of these two master sets or maybe even Dominaria, because you can actually fit it in there from a lore standpoint. So I have no doubt this card's been on the radar for a while. It's going to show up as a reprint, maybe even an uncommon. If that happens, this value is going to crash pretty hard, and I think a lot of people are skeptical of picking this thing up for $30 right now. Now, this is kind of interesting on the flip side of the coin, because there is a legacy deck that's garnered some attention this past week. Caleb Durward has been doing a deck tech in a video on YouTube where he's been showing off a Bomberman legacy deck, which of course is a variant of the old Bomberman vintage decks. And that deck does run this card, and I'm a little surprised that maybe it didn't get a little bit of attention or more attention from that, but keep an eye on it. We'll kind of see where this goes over the next few weeks. Number 4, Leyline of the Void, down $334 to $20. This is the Guild Pack version. Now, this card was a big sideboard card for Dredge in Modern for a while to deal with the mirror matchups. But as you know, Dredge has really fallen off percentage of field-wise recently. A lot of players are just playing Death Shadow or Death Shadow different variants. There's a lot of versions of that deck out there now. So they tend to be moving on to some other versions of Graveyard Hate. And also Graveyard Hate in general isn't quite as important as it was a few months ago. And because of that, this card's coming down a little bit. Number 3, Tarmogoyf from Modern Masters 2015, down $429 to $89.99. I gave this card a lot of hate last week, in particular the Modern Masters 2015 version, because of some print flaws and such. And I made the point that if I'm going to buy a $70, $80, $90 card, I'm not going to buy the one that potentially could have some print flaws in it. I'm just going to go ahead and pick up maybe the Modern Masters 2017 version, which I might even be able to find cheaper because there's more copies out there. It's a little more abundant right now. And on top of that issue, just generally, Goyfs are going down because they're using a lot less of the Modern field than they used to. And part of that is the decline of Jund as more people move towards like Death Shadow decks and Death Shadow variants. But just generally, cards just seeing a lot less play in Modern. Still a good card, still sees play, still see Legacy play and all that. But between the lesser amount of play, combined with the fact that it did get another reprint, Modern Masters 2017, card's a little bit soft right now, especially this version. Coming in number 2, Goryo's Vengeance, down $471 to $44.23. This card's been spiking over the last few weeks, rightfully so. The card was undervalued. What garnered the attention of players, though, was its inclusion in the Dubious Challenge Breach deck. So that was kind of the deck of the month for June. A lot of people wanted to go out there and pick up this card. It will go down a little bit now that the hype's subsiding. However, it's not going to go down to where it was, or probably anywhere close to where it was. It's still a really good card. Coming in number 1, Chalice of the Void, down $724 to $81. This card has been relentlessly spiking for weeks now, months now. So yes, it's about time we saw a snapback here, and I'm not really surprised to see this. Again, we're approaching 2 master sets. There's a chance this card gets reprinted, maybe again at the rare spot. That's going to cause the value to go down. A lot of players are going to be real hesitant about investing $80, $90 in a card for their deck when it could get reprinted soon. It's kind of scary right now. So great card. It's not going anywhere, but expect it to come down some more. All right, let's look at the cards that gained value this week. Coming in at number 5, a card being driven by Commander, not so much Modern, Chaos the Unhallowed, up $261 to $26.99. Now, the 3 gods from Hour of Devastation have had a big impact in the world of Commander, and that's what you're seeing here. The Scarab God in particular this time making this card go up a little bit. Number 4, Horizon Canopy, up $306 to $85.77. Now, this card has had an interesting month. In June, it started to spike a little bit, and that was partially due to the fact that it was part of the mana base of that Dubious Challenge deck, which was very popular in June. Now, on top of that, yes, it sees play in other Modern decks and even other Legacy and sometimes Vintage decks. The card is a staple, so keep that in mind. It's always going to hold value regardless of which deck is hot this month. Now, it started to go down a little bit last week, and it's bouncing back this week, Another deck has caught people's attention. This time it's a variant on the Company deck. This is a Selesnya Company deck that Todd Stevens played in the Star City Games team event last week, and his team came in first. This deck looked incredible, and we're going to talk more about it in just a few moments. Another card from that deck is incredibly hot right now. But if you haven't seen the deck list, check it out on the Star City Games Open site. It is pretty sweet. Number 3, Thoughtseize. Stormlore went up 326 to 4619. Well, what else can I say about this card I haven't said in the past? It's incredibly hot, huge staple in Modern. It's not going anywhere. And you can get a Theros copy for half the value or even less than half the value of this one. Some people actually prefer the art from the Theros version. Some prefer this original art, especially if they're into fairies or building a fairy deck or something like that, because there's a fairy in the art. But the main reason that this card is worth so much more than the Theros version is just print run. Lorwyn came out during a time that Magic was in a lull. They didn't sell that many packs comparatively, thus less were printed, and these are starting to dry up a little bit. The Theros version, very abundant. They printed a ton of that one. So because of the disparity in print runs, you're seeing a pretty big disparity in prices. Coming in number 2, Lich Lord of Onyx, up 576 to 1463. This was on our list last week. Another card being driven by Commander, not Modern. Again, this one because of the Scarab God. Coming in at number 1, here's the card I was alluding to earlier. Azusa Lost But Seeking, up $20.32 this week to $51.99. So 2 copies of this in Todd Stevens' deck. Why is this deck and this card in particular capturing so much attention? Well, Todd Stevens designed the deck to take on Death Shadow, which of course is a very popular, actually a number of very popular decks calling themselves Death Shadow that are in some ways very different. But generally, he wanted to take on those decks, and that's why he built this deck and decided to play it. And because of that, a lot of people are paying attention. Now, this is a huge spike. I do want to point that out. This is a big spike for 1 week. Expect a snapback. The other thing you have to be wary of, now that we're talking about a $50 card here, this card didn't come out of the blue yesterday. This card has seen a lot of Modern play in the past, still sees play in other Modern decks. So it's been on the radar. And with it being on the radar, and the fact that, again, we have 2 master sets coming up, I think buyer confidence is going to get shaken a little bit, even though it's really hot right now. So again, this will go back down a little bit. Maybe not to where it was prior to this spike, but it will go back down a little bit as players are going to brace themselves now for those sets coming up. All right, let's move into Legacy. I'll be honest, Legacy is a little slow this week. You're going to see a lot of the usual suspects kind of going up and down. So I'll go through these sort of quickly. Number 5, Plateau from Unlimited, down $13 to $180.49. Number 4, Fork from Unlimited, down $16.73 to $38.26. Number 3, Howling Mind from Unlimited, down $21 to $28.99 this week. Number 2, Gauntlet of Might from Unlimited, down $28.77 to $173.63. This card actually sits around the $200 mark pretty consistently, so if you can find copies for this, $150, $175, might not be a bad pickup. Number 1, there we go, the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale, down $40.12 this week to $1,299. All right, let's look at the cards that have gained value this week. Coming in number 5, Chains of Mistopheles, up $10.36 to $388.07. Number 4, Diamond Valley, up $12.09 this week to $176.48. This card's been going down over the last few weeks. It usually sits around the $200 price point as well. So again, if you can find a cheap copy of it, it might be a good time to pick it up just generally. Coming in number 3, Ollie from Cairo, up $19.48 to $99.47. So about a month ago, this card saw a nice little dip. It was down to $40, $50, and I had mentioned, you know what, if you can find it for that price, pick it up because it is a big part of Magic's history. Well, since then, guess what? It looks like a lot of other players were thinking the same thing because this card's been going up relatively consistently. So I could see it sitting around the $100 mark maybe for a while now. So this is one to keep an eye on. It isn't horrible in 93-94 format either. Generally, it's not a great card, though. But aside from that, it's just a strong part of the history of Magic, and it's just one of those rare Arabian Nights cards. Number 2, Jazam Jin, up $56.83 to $583.33. This one's back on the rise. It was kind of moving back and forth between $500 and $600. We'll have to see where it lands. Another card that's great in 93-94 format. Coming in at number 1, Drop of Honey, up $109.01 to $500. Now, a couple of copies of this are played in the Legacy Lands deck, which garnered some attention not too long ago. And this card at the time was a little bit undervalued. So due to those facts, started to spike a little bit and has continued to spike all the way up to $500 now. I do think this is a pretty high price point for the card, however, even though it is a rare Arabian Nights card, this has jumped way too fast, which means it is in line for some stabilization. This card will be going back down. Not to where it was before the spikes, definitely, but it will go down a little bit. I don't necessarily think this is a buyout, even though it is a big spike. I mean, maybe it is, but there's not a lot of copies of this out there to begin with. So because of that, if some players just try to pick up the few copies that are out there, it has sort of the same impression as a buyout. And I think that might be what we're seeing. But I guess time will tell on that. So regardless, though, I do think the value will be coming down on this one. Be careful to pick it up. Don't want to pay $500 right now. All right, let's move on to a few other notable cards. Now, this is usually where I talk about some notable Commander cards, and I do have a couple here, but a lot of the Commander cards also showed up again on the Modern list. So I have a few other random things too. The first one is Coastal Piracy, and this is really due to Commander. 8th edition version, up 13 cents this week. This saw a nice spike last week, and we talked about it in the previous video, but I wanted to check in this week and see if it was still stable. Of course, due to the fact that the Locust God is a thing now in the world of Commander, this card saw a nice little bump. Next is Urza's Bauble, up $1.08 to $4.99. So earlier I mentioned that Legacy Bomberman deck, and that deck plays this card. It's definitely caught a little bit of attention anyway. This is the 5th edition version that's gone up this week. Imprison, up $1.77 to $14.48. I thought this was an interesting one to point out. Christopher Rush art, very striking and unusual art, quite honestly, for Magic cards. You're not going to see this type of art anymore. But Christopher Rush, of course, passed away a little over a year ago now, and definitely left a hole in the community. I was talking a little bit about Christopher during my Q&A video last week, and got me thinking about some of the art that he's done and just some of my favorite cards. I've actually used to play with this card back in the day. It's not a bad Commander card, actually, if you want to try it out, but it is getting some attention, as you can see by the price point here. All right, I usually don't talk about foils too much, but this one caught my eye. The Invention Crow Mox and a nice spike this week, going up $35.24 to $88.04. Having said that, those are the cards for today. Now, we're going to be back early next week. We're going to do a deep dive standard singles episode, and we're going to talk about all of the impacts from the Pro Tour and, of course, from the top 8 results, which will happen tonight. So look for that early in the week. And we have a lot of other great content coming up. So until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page, as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.